All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Sausage Fest hangout, as Kevin called it, our bromance. Yes, we're four white males from Christian countries talking about white male Christian privilege. So, yes, this is going to be, we're going to use the Oregon militia incident situation as a sort of springboard to talk about various issues relating to white males from Christian countries talking about whoa. Okay, I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah,
Hold on.
that's fine. I do this every single time I do a hangout. You've got the window open and you've not muted it, so your audio's losing back to you. I'm an idiot too. It's fine. It's fine.
All right. Okay, I think I've sorted it.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I think I've sorted it.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so now I wanted to
Temptation's too much to just repeat the words now.
So yeah, I wanted to start off by talking about the incident that's happening in Oregon at the. Hold on, let me just bring up my information here so I'm getting the name right. At the
Melhua.
yeah, the Melhua National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon, which has been seized by militia from Nevada, related to the Bundy family, the Bundy nonsense that went on
Arseholes.
last year. Yeah. And yeah, so I just thought it was really interesting that the way that the militia movement is received by the American populace. And I just wanted to quickly mention that yes, none of us are Americans, and we're talking about American stuff. And I fully admit that the reason why I chose Andy and Kevin is because they were the people that I most wanted to do a hangout with on YouTube, because Andy was the first channel I found in the, what do we call it, the YouTube social justice / feminist community, or whatever we want to call it. Then I think it was Andy, then Kevin, and so those are the first two guys I found. So so that's why I chose to do this with them. I really wanted to do a hangout with them, and I fully admit to that. No relevance at all.
I'm really chuffed too, because I've always wanted to do a hangout with Andy as well, and I thought, well, they're not going to invite me on the drunken politics thing they do. So I was waiting for an invite, but it never came. So
right. Sorry about that. We will do one again soon. Yeah, I'm on the soft drink tonight there, so not wild.
Like drunken politics, that sounds a lot like drunken peasants. I thought it was like.
Yeah, oh god, yeah.
I'll make you something.
But the thing is, the drunken peasants never actually appear to ever be drunk. They're high a lot of the time, but they're very rarely actually drunk.
Yeah, they make a lot of money. They make a lot of money.
It's false advertising. I want liver cirrhosis. Damn it, that's what's advertised.
Yeah. The more high yuppies.
I've never managed to sit through an entire episode of that.
No, neither have I.
I've started watching like 2 or 3, but
has anyone? That's the point I would ask. Even the most hardcore DPP fan, have they ever sat through a whole one? Because it's fucking tedious.
Yeah, like 2.5
even
hours.
to agree with the points being made, it's stupidly boring. What the fuck? How is this to do with the militiamen? How the fuck did this happen? This conversation.
That was my fault. All right, Garrett, go back to whatever you're doing.
So yes, the militia. I just thought it was really interesting watching that unfold and learning about the history of the militia movement and related groups, but how it's received now and how it's always been received by America as sort of not terrorism, not domestic terrorism, not barely even extremism. Like they don't even really seem to refer to them as particularly radical. And it's just sort of tolerated and accepted as part of the American sort of way of life, or the American sort of system. I guess it's part of the way that their country was founded or whatever, the Second Amendment and stuff. But it's funny because they only seem to bring up Second Amendment rights when it's white people. I don't remember anything about, I don't remember hearing much about Second Amendment rights when it's to do with black people or Native Americans. Well, there was an incident in 1973 where some Native Americans took over some government property, and it didn't quite go very well. It didn't go the same way as this one's going.
I read a great article in the week about an incident in, I think it was somewhere like Minnesota, which doesn't sound a very black area, but black guys in the 70s had an armed occupation of some government building to protest something or other. That's how well I read it. And the brutality with which they were repressed was, what you would expect of what is in essence an insurrection. That's what you would expect how a government should or would react. And yet the incredibly passive response to these, and they are. I mean, there's no other way I think you can describe them as traitorous terrorists. Basically,
at the very least, they're separatists. Whatever you want to call them, technically, they definitely are separatists. They don't recognize the authority of the federal government. They don't want to be part of the federal government. There's this whole thing called posse comitatus, which is, it's funny because these militia guys always go on about the Constitution, but their movement is actually based on something from English common law from way, way back called posse comitatus, which means the power of the county, which is a system in which you only recognize the county sheriff. That's the highest authority that they recognize. They don't recognize anyone more, higher up than that. So I don't know if you remember, but last, during the Bundy standoff, he at one point said that he would only turn himself in to the county sheriff. That's the only person who he would allow to be arrested by. He would go peacefully if the county sheriff arrested him. And he went on and on about how the county sheriff's the only power in Clark County, Nevada. It's quite bizarre.
Unless that guy's black.
Well, yeah,
I don't recognize your authority.
That's the other thing about posse comitatus is that it's a white supremacist movement. It dates back from the Reformation, the Reconstruction era. Just after the Civil War, where Northern troops were occupying the South, and they basically kicked the South, sort of kicked them out with all these. They used these technical legal arguments to get the Northern armies kicked out, and they sort of. They use the specific wording of the posse comitatus English common law thing. So I think it's quite funny when they go on about the Constitution when they actually, their stuff dates back to the enemy of the Constitution.
As I understand it, the whole reason the right to bear arms is supposed to be so you can overthrow the government if need be, is it not?
That's right.
So they're actually weirdly using, which is really weird.
It's not just that, is it? It's in part to as a bulwark against tyrannous government, whether it's your own government or an invader. But these people aren't a well-organized militia. These people are dickheads.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is the terminology is well-regulated militia.
Yeah.
And with going by the infighting and interfighting of these militia groups, the group that's currently occupying that building, there's all kinds of infighting going on. There's people getting kicked out, people wanting to voluntarily leave, people dragging other people out because of mental illnesses and addiction problems, and people randomly leaving and skiving off with charity money and all kinds of stuff. So that's not a well-regulated militia, no matter how you look at it. And yeah, the other thing is, the terminology dates back to before there was a police force in America and before there was a standing army. So I think that's a big part of it as well. And I think those two things make it a lot less relevant.
Well, I mean, that's the thing I can't get over in the Second Amendment is, like, well-regulated militia. And it doesn't say for, like, the purpose of, I forgot the exact wording. I mean, can you remember the wording of the Second Amendment? For the purpose of, I don't know, like, protecting freedom or whatever, like, you need a well-regulated militia. It's not worded like that, but like it's basically saying it's got all these caveats, So it's not saying you can just have a weapon whenever the fuck you feel like it.
Well, the biggest problem with it is they treat it as if it's some sort of absolutely unchangeable and unchanging document, which is bollocks. Especially because the thing they're defending was in itself the second change to the fucking Constitution.
Yeah.
It is for the purpose.
So the idea that you have to be absolutely, Go on, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying. I think it's just like for the purpose of protecting a free state or something like that. I mean, I could just like look it up now, whatever. But yeah.
You do have access to the largest repository of knowledge in human history. Could just look it up. It's fine. Which is ironic considering the mistakes I make.
There have been black nationalist, black separatist movements in America, and I don't remember people tossing around the well-regulated militia terminology with regard to them. Black Panthers were technically a separatist movement.
So it says being necessary to the security of a free state. Like, that's what it says, being necessary. How the fuck do you get past the words being necessary? It means that's necessary. Like, yeah.
Yes, because, I mean, it dates back from a time where the biggest weapons people had were cannons and stuff, you know, where a well-regulated militia could actually pose a genuine threat to the U.S. military and the U.S. government. That hasn't been the case for a long time.
Sheriff. Well, exactly, that's at the core of it. These people, if the US government wanted to go tyrannical, there's nothing you and fucking Billy Bob with your 13.5 Magnums are going to fucking do. They would never have to take you on in a battle. They could just drone strike your town into rubble. They would never even have to meet you on the battlefield, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're still going to fucking protect it. And like I say, the Second Amendment is itself a change to the Constitution, so don't argue as if it's a fucking it's the Bible, you know, from a literalist perspective or whatever. We can change the fucking rules because they're not.
And there have been amendments that have amended previous amendments as well, so that has happened. So that can happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, the prohibition was introduced and repealed.
Indeed.
It can happen, you know. It's not unprecedented.
The whole slavery thing.
Yeah, that. But yeah, that's what this whole militia thing really dates back to. It's about the Civil War. It's about slavery. It's about the Reconstruction era. About segregation, Jim Crow. It's tied into all of that stuff. It's a deeply white supremacist movement, and you know, there's lots of these. What are you going to say?
I was just going to make the observation, not entirely connected, so I probably shouldn't have interjected, but I'm still fascinated by the fact that they've elected a black guy twice in that very same society. It's bizarre.
Well, you know,
it's bizarre.
America's kind of like two countries in a way. It's and that's what the Civil War was. It was about the sort of the North that's more tolerant and advanced in thought, and you know, and then there's the South that's more sort of capitalist and agrarian and wanting to fight off the North. And so I think, it wouldn't surprise me if at some point in the, I would guess, distant future, that if America does split in half, because they seem to have very different ideas about many, many things in the North and South.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the South would survive if any of these right-wing hillbilly types actually made good on their threat to secede from the Union. I don't think they would survive for 5 minutes. I think it's the emptiest of empty threats.
I saw a great quote, great stat today actually. Was from Texas of all places, where their governors, you know, did threat to secede on live fucking national TV, and it said that for every $1 the Texans send to Washington in federal tax, they receive $1.88. So they would literally be almost 100% out of fucking money. They'd have 22 cents on the dollar, basically.
Yeah. There's quite a few southern states that are a net loss. You know, that make money from taxes rather than give it away to the federal government. I think Kentucky is one of the worst ones. That they bring in more from federal tax income than they give out.
But yeah, my question in regards to that whole like standoff situation is everything working properly? Audio and everything? Yeah.
Well, you know, not really, but you know, what are we gonna do?
It's like everyone is like saying that this will result in some kind of standoff of some kind. They don't know if it's going to be like a shootout or a massacre, or it's just like everyone's going to chill out and relax. My question is, like, do you think if it was a bunch of jihadis or like black people or someone else, that, I mean, it might lead to the same conclusion just a lot faster, you know, because they'd be like, we got to get in there. There's these like nationals.
I personally don't think it's going to end in a gunfight. I think, and the reason for that is because it's happened too many times in the past that the Americans are they're on edge about that. You know, you got the Ruby Ridge standoff in 1992, and then there's the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas, and I think American government sort of learned its lesson there, and they've learned to just let this stuff pass over by itself. You know, it's really bad PR to end it in a shooting fight.
But if it was jihadis, they would have bombed the fuck out of it already. Right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, that doesn't result in the same kind of negative PR, does it?
Well, nah. I mean, we got Bin Laden, whatever. So, no, you're going to say something, Kevin?
Unrelated to all of that, can you say exterminate? I want to hear you say exterminate.
Oh, fuck!
It does genuinely sound like. Sorry, go on.
What do you think will happen in this situation? Is that better?
That was just weird. I thought it was just
Will they
weird.
be exterminated?
Oh, God.
Try like unplugging and plugging in your mic or something, maybe. I don't know.
I quite like it. It's quite nice. It breaks up the monotony of three English accents.
From the future. Yeah. Hello. I just unplugged it.
No, we don't.
Plug in my other mic, like I could tell it was Andy.
I think one of the most interesting parallels...
Is this whole standoff, though?
Go on, Andy.
Sorry, go on. I was just saying, this is all about cattle ranching, is it? It's about...
No, that was kind of the initial justification for it. There was this family of ranchers that were
Right.
convicted of
How to pick cotton up.
was it deer? I think they slaughtered a whole bunch of deer illegally and then burned down a whole shit like 120 or 170 or something acres of forest to try and cover their tracks. And so they got arrested and convicted of that.
Right.
And that was the initial sort of justification for it. But then when the militia arrived, that family actually rejected, I think they're called the Hammonds, they rejected the militia and they rejected their tactics.
Yeah.
They didn't. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're probably fine with the militia movement, the sovereign citizen movement and whatnot. But the tactic of seizing that government building at that particular time, they were like, we're not on board with this, we don't want anything to do with this. So that initial justification is bollocks.
Yeah.
Then they switched their justification to, we're just doing it for the local and Oregonians, inhabitants, farmers and cattle ranchers and all that, poachers and whatnot. And then sort of shared community in Oregon said, nah, we're not into that. So they don't even have that justification now either.
No.
So the whole thing's just a total mess.
That was the problem with the initial justification.
They're looking for a cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking for a cause. They've got the militia sorted, and now they want a cause. And it seems a bit of an arse backwards way to do it.
Well, they have a cause. The cause is to unite the militia movements around America and start an uprising or whatever. But what I'm more talking about is their sort of outward-facing justification that they use. I'm talking about the media and whatnot. And their cause hasn't worked out at all. Most of the militia movements around the U.S. have denounced their actions and don't want anything to do with them. And actually, a couple of militia movements. There's one called the Pacific. I can't remember what they're called. Hold on, let me find out. They're called the...
But while you're still looking for that, that was the problem with the initial justification was that they were going to they've been wrongfully imprisoned. No, they burnt down a big fuck-off forest. How dangerous is that, for fuck's sake?
Yeah, it's slaughtered a ridiculous number of
madmen.
So there's two groups that have turned up. They're called the Idaho 3%ers and the Pacific Patriots Network, two other armed militia groups. And they're there to sort of keep an eye on the Bundy militia, not to help them. They're there to sort of be a buffer between them and the government and make sure that the Bundy militia doesn't get up to any bollocks, So the overall militia movement aren't on board with this, which I thought was just quite hilarious.
I want to know what they're called, the 3%ers.
I don't know.
Actually, I read about that.
What they're talking about, but it sounds right.
I read about it yesterday. Apparently, 3% of the population is going to stand up and take on the government when the apocalypse comes. That's what it means.
Right.
Like the other
Is that
97%
before the rapture, though?
and just get shot in the head, and then these 3% will rise up above the ashes and be like, "We've come to save you."
Well, that actually reminds me of another group that's intertwined with this whole thing, with the whole sovereign citizen militia movement thing, which is the Christian identity movement, which is sort of radical extremist arm of Christianity that is like, they believe that they're the true descendants of Israel and that they go on about all this crazy stuff. They're really white supremacist and they've got all these crazy ideas. And they're also tied in heavily with the Posse Comitatus and the white separatist movement and whatnot. But it's deeply Christian as well as deeply racist.
Is this like the Dominionist people? Or creating Christendom on Earth or something.
No, I think that's actually more. I don't think that's actually considered as radical or extreme. I think that's more mainstream in America.
So that makes the Dominionists are actually moderates by comparison. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
God.
They're just searching for an identity, really.
But America is the nice bit of America. The nice half of America seems so pleasant and accommodating, and they create great culture and stuff. And then there's this other Billy fucking gun-toting racist prick half as well.
You step over the border and you're like, this is shit. I'm going back.
It does seem there's like divided there into the two. Yeah, they've got all the racists in the South almost. And
well, I have heard that the South has like Southern hospitality, so when you go to like a Southerner's house, they're very polite.
Yeah, because you're white. They'd be hospitable.
yeah.
If you were a hijab wearing Muslim woman, I don't think it would go quite so well.
But I mean, they do have like
just a kid building a fucking clock in a fucking tech class at school.
That's true.
You wouldn't be welcome there.
Or a 12-year-old kid with a BB gun.
But I mean, they do have a kind of like affected politeness, so that's not necessarily present in the North. But like maybe they would have more of a problem.
Well, I'd rather.
Black,
I don't know about anyone else, but I'd rather have an honest someone say, "I don't care. I don't care about you. I don't want you to have a nice day. I don't know who the fuck you are," than a fake smile and a how you do. I don't care. Honest.
Yeah, and having it be reliant on you being a white person from a Christian nation as well. It makes it a bit. Bullshit, really.
I'm not saying that like makes up for all of the problems in the South. I'm just saying they at least have that kind of affected Southern hospitality. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying therefore they're not. You're
saying that makes up for Jim Crow and racism and slavery. Definitely.
Yeah.
I do love talking shit. I don't know if you've noticed. I don't know if you've realised that.
I hadn't noticed that at all. It's just new information.
One really interesting parallel I've found between this Bundy militia thing and other groups is with Black Lives Matter, because I think the way that the police responded to like the Ferguson protests and stuff, which they were unarmed, mostly peaceful, at least at the start, and their reaction was really way more aggressive than the reaction to this militia standoff thing. I
can't believe they let those fucking guys on TV, like the militia guys. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I've got a big problem with barbecue, and they're like, "Oh, tell us more."
And there's a photo that's going around of Amon Bundy shaking hands with the sheriff, the local sheriff, as well. Because they go on about how awesome sheriffs are and whatnot, and they arranged this. The county sheriff arranged a meeting with Amon Bundy outside of the building, away from all the guys and stuff, and he didn't arrest him. He didn't. He just they talked.
So the one guy he would have gone peacefully to shook his fucking hand.
Exactly. Yeah, and they don't have hostages or anything, so there's no like danger in arresting one of them.
All those poor birds. What's going to happen to the birds at the sanctuary? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. He's going to shoot.
Yeah. Not only did he shake his hand, but he also said they talked in their discussion. He said, "We'll provide armed cover for you to flee the town, protecting you from the federal government if you decide to leave." So they'll protect. So they won't have any repercussions. And not only that, but they said you can leave bearing your arms. You don't even have to put your guns away. We'll protect you with our guns while you have your guns, and we'll protect you from the other arms of law enforcement that want to arrest you if you just leave the town.
He needs to lose his fucking job immediately.
But yeah, there was. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was this Black Lives Matter protest. I can't remember where it was, but there was a Black Lives Matter protest where there was they were chanting "pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon." And Fox News played that on a cycle, like played it hundreds and hundreds of times, this little clip of them saying that over and over and over again. Meanwhile, there's a tweet put out by there was a tweet put out by a journalist quoting one of the Bundy brothers, and he said, let me just find it here. Hold on, I've got it. I just need to bring it up, just so I can get the exact wording. So, hold on.
Did he mention the word nigger by any chance? I'm guessing he probably did. Just a thought.
Was it the Negro needs to learn how to put cotton?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like his dad, that was that great quote from his dad. He started off that massive rant with, "Let me tell you what I know about the Negro."
It's like, we got a scholar here.
That's right. It's funny, like Fox News just seemed to have not seen it coming at all, that he was going to turn out to be this like deeply racist guy. When if they'd done their research when he was going on about the county sheriff, they would have realized that he was posse comitatus, and that posse comitatus is connected deeply to slavery and racism and stuff. So it's like it was a very telegraphed thing. You know, they could have easily seen this coming. But anyway, I pulled up the tweet. So it's from a journalist called Ian Culgren, and he says, "I talked to Ryan Bundy on the phone again. He said they're willing to kill and be killed if necessary. Hashtag Oregon under attack." And it's funny, like, when he says willing to kill, he's obviously talking about law enforcement. That's the relevant people that they would kill. So, yeah, so there's him making a more direct threat than the pigs in blankets fry 'em like bacon thing, which is not really an actual threat. It's more just like a statement of, I don't know, severe dislike, disdain, whatever. But this is a guy saying a much more direct and clear actual threat, and nobody cares.
Yeah, but it's okay for white people to kill police. That's fine.
Yeah, because probably all sorts of nuance what they're saying.
And, you know, it's not like it hasn't happened. There were those two... Do you remember those two people who shot those cops in Las Vegas just after the Bundy standoff?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they were at the Bundy standoff, and they were kicked out for being considered too extreme for the militias that were there. They basically said, you guys need to go. You're too crazy for us, which is saying something. But yeah, they did go on to kill a couple cops.
That's what I mean about the shitty half of America. It's like an onion of bigotry. Which, no matter how deep you think it goes, no matter how bad it is, there's just another layer of like worse shit still to come. It's just awful. But there you go.
But yeah, I mean, they do have Black Lives Matter people on TV, but it's normally to kind of berate them and put them across as being unreasonable. They're like, oh, what's your concern? Like, oh, what are you going on about? Oh, come on. You really think there's a problem? Whatever. But when they have these fucking like comitatus people on TV, they're like, what's? Please tell us your problem with the federal government. You know, they're like actually interested in what they have to say. But
and not only that, but they're willing to forgive them saying some ridiculously stupid, crazy-sounding stuff. There was one bit where I think it was Cliven Bundy. He said something about the blood moon. You know, they had this blood moon where the moon went red or whatever, and he was going on about it being a federal government conspiracy and stuff. And Short-Headed was like, yes, okay, let's move on. Like, it's just the stupidest stuff.
I've been lighting up the moon on the blood to try and get to our brains through the special signals.
Well, all I will ask at this point is, does anyone have conclusive proof that it wasn't a government conspiracy?
That's a good point.
Because that's what a good scientist should always ask.
Building 7.
Building 7. What about Building 7? What about Building... Fuck up, you Building
7. Man.
Something melting point of steel, something.
Yeah.
I bet you could... If you had or if I had the talent, you could put together a randomised 9/11 conspiracy generator, where it's always something like it can't melt at that temperature, or the plane can't fly in there, or the brilliant one, the no plane people. Have you heard of these? They say they weren't real planes. They were holograms going into the buildings. It was some massive giant death ray laser from the fucking moon or some shit that actually shut the buildings. What the fuck? You mental cunts! What's wrong with you? Like, not all 9/11 conspiracy is bad enough, but that's off the charts.
Yeah, I find that it's the constant demands for investigations as well. I find that odd. They keep saying we need to investigate this. We need to investigate it. And when they do an investigation and find no evidence of the conspiracy, they say that the people who did the investigation must be part of the conspiracy. So then why are you calling for more investigations? What's the point? If the people doing the investigations are corrupt, then you shouldn't be asking them to do investigations.
Do your own investigation.
Yeah.
You can be trusted. If you're the only person that can be trusted, you do the fucking investigation and come back to me with the results.
Yeah, but when they do that, it's just lunatic nonsense. Like, WorldNet Daily. WorldNet Daily were the ones who are like leading the charge in the birther conspiracy, and then when the guy who runs WorldNet Daily put out this book called "Where's the Birth Certificate?" And then when they released the birth certificate, he just renamed the book, Where's the Real Birth Certificate?
Awesome.
That's genius.
Great fucking marketing right there.
There's a man who knows how to sell books. You know.
Yeah, that's
There is
retconning at its best. Yeah.
There is this thing in America where conspiracy theories seem to be sort of weirdly tolerated. Like, the birther thing's a great example. Like, Donald Trump was a birther in the 2012 presidential primaries, Republican primaries. He was going on about birther conspiracy stuff. Now he's the front runner 4 years later. And it's like nobody cares about if you're a conspiracy nut.
Have you seen that 1989 quote from Trump where he's like, the American public is real stupid, and I bet I could just say anything, and they'd just vote for me because they're a bunch of dumbasses? That's literally what the quote says from like 1989. It's just a picture of his smug face, like, and that's totally what he's doing. He's just like, I can say any old shit. And people just
he's playing them like a fucking flute. You feed them the shit they want, and they lap it up. They fucking love it.
Because he said he knows exactly what the American public wants to hear, and that he's just going by that. So.
That's eerily similar to L. Ron Hubbard. He said something similar a few years before he started his cult. He said that I could probably just turn one of my books into a religion and people would eat it up. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but he said something along those lines as well. So that's eerily similar. It's weird.
Like,
it's a religion. That's where they make money. Yeah. Then he started a religion, outright after saying religion is the way to make money.
Yeah, and it was a religion that heavily tithed its adherents as well. And still does.
I reckon Jesus probably the same shit.
Hillary's good, but... And now he's like, fuck Hillary.
They're like headquarters.
She's a piece of shit.
Called like, I can't remember, it's called like Gold Building or something like that. They've got this massive headquarters building, this is the Scientologists. And apparently it rivals in expense in terms of how expensive it was to build. It rivals the Vatican and the Taj Mahal and any other religious building you can name. It was just this. It's like this crazy, huge, U-shaped, giant, not skyscraper, but big building. That's a really ostentatious, flashy thing. It's accrued a ridiculous amount of wealth in 60 years.
Where the hell is that?
I'm not sure. Let me try and look it up.
Is my audio tolerable, by the way? Or...
it's crackly, but it's like I say, it's got a nice Dalek quality to it.
Understandable.
Yeah. The thing with Scientology, they don't tell you about all the Xenu science fiction-y shit straight away. They wait until they've really got you sucking in before they give you all of that. They start off just being like any other religion, just being all vague and spiritual and that, but then eventually they start telling you, by the way, universe used to be ruled by a warlord called Xenu, and we all have the ghosts of aliens attached to us, and we need to play around with metal silver rods until they leave.
Yeah. But again, Andy, you're not being a very good scientist here. Do you have conclusive proof that these things are not true? Stop. Logic, motherfuckers. Logic.
Oh, logic. Yes.
I looked it up, and Gold Base isn't actually their massive headquarters building I was thinking of. It's a different place. It's in the countryside, and it's this huge complex of buildings. It's called Gold Base.
That sounds so much like a fucking James Bond villain's hangout. Gold Base.
Well, that Scientology has that. They have a prison that they run. I can't remember what that one's called, but they have this. It's technically not a prison, but they send bad Scientologists there.
They're just holding people hostage.
Yeah, the guy David Miscavige, who runs the church at the moment, his wife is there and hasn't been seen for years.
For fuck's
Oh my god!
Why am I laughing? That's awful.
Yeah, I know. I'm only laughing because I'd be crying otherwise. It's technically not a prison.
Yeah, but you're not allowed out.
The place you have to go to.
On that basis, Joseph Fritzl technically didn't have a prison either.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh god.
But you can tell it's science fiction because it sounds like Diamond City from Wizard of Oz. Diamond City, Gold Base,
Emerald City.
Can people visit? Can people visit the not prison? Are they allowed to go there and see the not inmates? Yeah.
So, I'd seriously doubt that.
Oh man. Do they not get like a phone call?
I reckon you could probably go there, but leaving might be a problem.
Yeah. But even in an actual prison, you get to make a phone call once a day, don't you, or once a week? I don't know what it is. Do they not even get that in the not prison?
I doubt it. They have work details and stuff as well. They make them work.
It's not really a phone call so much as a carrier pigeon.
The way you get out from that place is by like going through a series of, what do they call them? When they do that thing with a not psychoanalyst because they hate psychoanalyzing, but they do their version of that. And if you like give the right answers enough times or something, that's when they let you out. So yeah.
Oh, happiness shit.
What's it called? It's
personality test.
Is it Dianetics?
Dianetics.
That's what they're called. Yes, that's the thing that doesn't really do anything.
E-meter, yeah.
Yes, it's involves titting around with silver foil. Yeah.
L. Rod Hubbard was like supposedly really, really against psychiatry and psychology, but then when he died, in his toxicology report, he had like tons of psychoactive drugs that they use to medicate people that psychiatrists prescribe to people and stuff. So he was obviously seeing at least one psychiatrist, even though he was publicly against psychiatry in this really militant way.
Yeah, but so they can prey on the mentally ill, basically. They prey on people who don't have. Well, yeah, it's quite sickening. But they get. Yeah.
They preyed on him. Poor guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the celebrity Scientologists I don't get. Like Tom Cruise, the woman who's Bart Simpson, what's her name? Nancy Cartwright, is it?
There's heaps of them. Beck is a Scientologist, which is horrible.
Yeah.
Beck, the musician.
Oh, Beck! Oh, really? God.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
A lot of them are raised in it.
Yeah. I said that I'd converted to Scientology for April Fool's one year, and one of my friends believed it he didn't realize he believed it for like a month because he never noticed that I'd said April Fool after later on in the day. I posted it on Facebook.
What's the practical difference if you convert to Scientology? How does your life change? Like what's the process involved there? I don't know.
They give you a certificate with your thetan levels and you can show it to people.
It's basically just a really shitty version of therapy. Basically, that's all it really is.
1200.
It's a part of therapy that doesn't work, yes.
Well, indeed, yeah. And, I think a lot of it is just the typical cult stuff of belonging to a group and having a whole us and them dichotomy.
Like Stefan Molyneux.
Exactly, yeah.
He's a
a cult leader, isn't he?
Jesus.
Technically speaking, yeah. I mean, there's that guy who specializes in deprogramming cult members who has worked with people from his group. So yeah, I think that pretty much makes.
You should check out that guy's interview. I can't remember his name. I'll look it up. I'll look it up later. I'm not doing it now. I'm a lazy.
On the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, I watched that.
It's absolutely amazing the way he takes them through it.
Yeah.
And how it's basically, other than directly fleecing money from them, he does it via like contributions or whatever. So at least it's not, a genuine money scam. But other than that, it's classic cult.
Like, how do you deprogram a Stephen Molyneux fan? He's like, women are not the source of all your problem. Libertarian economics don't work properly. You're like, what? What's happening? No.
Yeah.
If you I don't even know. I
everything.
Well, certainly I've tried rational arguments with them, and that doesn't work. I can tell you that much. Anarcho-capitalists seem to be just completely oblivious to the way things actually work in reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was childish, selfish load of old nonsense ever. Anarcho-capitalism. It's just blatant greed and selfishness, and I don't want to pay my taxes. That's all it is.
That was probably my favorite episode by Kevin, like the Stephen Molyneux one, when he was having that conversation with that woman.
Oh, with that crazy woman.
That was the most crazy conversation I'd ever heard. I thought I couldn't. When I was watching that, because I do my research mostly at work, right? I do night shifts, and I watched hours and hours of videos, and it was about 3 in the morning. I was so tired and pissed off, and I was watching that, and I started laughing. So I had tears pouring down my face. I was so funny. This woman's so crazy. She's going about. I used to be really pretty, but now I'm ugly like a dog or whatever. Just all this crazy shit. And should I take my husband to go to Thailand so he can have a prostitute and stuff? Like, I've never heard a person ever go on about stuff like that.
She was talking about the kind of husband she wanted and how he can be shittier now because she's old and like younger guys won't want her, so he can be like a shitty guy. He can like abuse her or something. I don't know, it was so weird.
No, I just had a thought about that. Yeah.
You know, race realist.
I can't remember the full details. It was something like that, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
Well, you can go and find the full details out on my page, Kevin Logan, fucking YouTubebollocks.com.
I'm so lazy.
Sorry, go on.
I just had a thought about her and people that talk like her. They're kind of like the gender version of race realists. They're like gender realists.
Precisely.
They think they're going on about like this really practical. They're talking really practical differences between genders, but really they're just babbling on about like semi-incoherent nonsense.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it in that way, but that's precisely correct. They think they're being straightforward, and also some of the times they think they're being incredibly profound. And actually, they're just idiots.
Mm-hmm. It's like a lot of people. Not any of us, obviously.
I definitely think that often applies to libertarians. They think they've like cottoned on to this like amazing revolutionary idea, but yeah, it's been around for a long time and it hasn't been put into practice because it doesn't work. And the people who are actually in power around the world know it doesn't work because they're a bit smarter than people who are libertarians. So it's never like if you look at the other end of the spectrum, anarcho-syndicalism, that has been put into practice and is currently still in practice in Spain because it does work.
I think the government is preventing it from being implemented using, light rays or something like that.
Yes.
Well, exactly.
Yes.
And the beauty of that argument is that doesn't need conclusive evidence. That's fine.
Yeah.
That passes. That scans.
Yeah.
But yeah, the libertarians are just full of fucking shite, basically. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it other than they're selfish pricks who need society to metaphorically slap them in the face.
Yeah.
And just wake up! Anyway.
I think of anyone I've ever debated with or argued with on the internet, they are the most into circular reasoning. They just go round and round and round in these circles. Like I remember talking to one person about, they were going on about how, I mentioned the police as a reason why, libertarian ideals don't necessarily work because things like private police don't have a history of not working. And he goes, and I mentioned that they have a history. Those sorts of things have a history of getting into monopolies and stuff like that. And he responded to that with, "Monopolies aren't always bad." It's like, whoa, okay. Right? If you can't if you can't argue against the negative, just say it's not a negative, I guess.
Monopoly is good. It's by definition not bad, so it's a pretty solid argument.
Well, the point with the libertarians is they may exist, but I've yet to meet a libertarian who wasn't a massive hypocrite on some area or another. Precisely because it doesn't work.
Great example because he goes on about forcing women to have abortions and stuff.
Yeah, Molyneux, yeah, exactly. His fucking wet dream fantasy thing about locking up with pregnant women in cupboards to stop them from getting an abortion. Like what? You're a and not just that, but when black people get shot by the police, all of a sudden he turns into the most police-loving statist you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he fucking loves it when they're killing black folk. But then it's violence when they want his taxes.
Yeah.
Oh, violence as well. They keep saying the government uses violence to make us pay taxes. Like how? Yeah. They I don't know how it works in your country. In our country, they send me a letter telling me how much I owe. I submit my tax return. They tell me how much I owe. If I don't pay it, they add 100 quid onto it.
I don't even do that. There's just a line at the bottom of the paycheck, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And you just, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that is I've got fucking street lighting and stuff that I can see when I'm trying to drive home and things.
Yeah, that's the most basic version of the hypocrisy of like sovereign citizen types, and that we're talking about, that libertarians, sovereign citizens, all that crap, that they are perfectly happy to take advantage of the roads and bridges and street lights and all that stuff, and even the like hardcore militia guys are fine with that. There was a group called the Montana Freemen who set themselves up on a farm to try and be as separatist as possible, to not like leave the farm, not use roads, not use phone lines, all that. But they couldn't do it. They ended up having to betray their own ideals, and yeah, they were doing stuff like the Oregon militia is making use of the post office and stuff. So yeah, I think
the way I look at taxes, it's basically like a subscription charge for you to live in a fucking civilization. It's your membership card to a civilization.
Yes.
Which is better than living in a fucking hovel or in a cave or some shit.
Mm.
Well, like, yeah, people are always telling me that socialism is wrong and it doesn't work, and then I'm just like, well, why the fuck do you live in society? Because, like, that's what socialism is. You know, if you fucking earn and they take indexes, that's socialism. You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you had
it's not just socialism, it's violence.
Socialism. They're trying to kill you with these roads, and they're like, cars are deadly weapons, not guns.
Well, I love that. Molyneux does it as well, where they'll say guns are about defence and freedom, but taxes are violence. You don't know what the word violence means, do you? You clearly have no concept of what that actually is.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, I hear anarcho-capitalists say stuff like that everything the government does involves force in some way, and I was having an argument with one of these guys, and I mentioned food banks. You know, in New Zealand we have food banks that are funded by the Lotteries Commission, right? So the Lotteries Commission, which is entirely voluntary, based on the lottery, you take that money and spend it on food banks and social programs. How is that force?
You're everywhere.
Where are you, Garrett? What country are you in?
Me and Demotivator live in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Oh, you live in New Zealand as well? Oh, okay.
Well, we know each other.
A traitor. A traitor, a foreign traitor now, are you?
Yeah, we split off from the UK because we're more advanced. That's why we gave women the right to vote 30 years before you did.
Go so far away. That was my point. You've almost gone a sarcastically far distance away from us if you've broken up.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing out here. Floating around.
Well, you've got the orcs. The orcs are the problem now, I imagine.
Well, the tourists who have come to see the orcs.
There's a lot of social issues with hobbits, you know, meth and drinking. So,
meth and drinking. It's like it's Scotland then, clearly.
The native hobbits.
That's this thing. I love you, really.
It's funny. You know, there's these videos on YouTube where you can watch like compilations of footage taken by sovereign citizen guys of them interacting with the cops, and like it's weird for me to watch it because on the one hand I'm against the sovereign citizen movement because they're a bunch of idiots, but on the other hand a lot of the people who watch that stuff are really pro-police and that's why they like it. And so, like, you're appreciating something that people who you're completely ideologically opposed to are also appreciating for a completely different reason. So it's quite a bizarre experience. But there's like these great videos of like a guy, you know, gets pulled up by the cops, refuses to give his name, refuses to hand his license and registration over, refuses to even wind their window down, like, and the police just end up basically smashing the window in with this instrument they have that like is designed to break glass, and then like just forcibly grabbing the like license and registration and stuff. And they're just the most sort of pedantic, immature, ridiculous people.
Well, you're bringing it back to the thing you mentioned earlier, the Latin fucking shot.
The posse comitatus.
Yeah. I don't speak foreign. Don't be silly.
It's Latin. Nobody speaks Latin.
Exactly, yeah. I speak Brummie. I don't speak anything else. Yeah, what's the point? Yeah, the sheriff thing. The whole point about I only submit to the sheriff. No, I'm sorry. That's not. You don't get to fucking choose. In essence, we're going to make you submit. Now that, in that sense, that is sort of violence. But they did sort of by force take over a federal building. You know, a weird choice of federal building, but a federal building nonetheless. So you a tough shit. You gave up your right to give yourself up at that point. They should be taken.
Well, the U.S. sovereign citizen militia posse comitatus guys have always been sort of into that's always been their kinds of targets. Aside from Timothy McVeigh, who was against the what do you call them, the firearms, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms guys. Mostly they're against that sort of government agency because like there was an incident in 1994, I think it was, or 1995, where there was this local county ordinance, whatever, official who bulldozed this road in Nevada, reopened a road in a national park. So I think that gives away the sort of South's agrarian roots. They are obsessed with like farmers, ranchers, that kind of stuff. That's always generally been their focus. The Ruby Ridge guy was living like way out in the forest in the Wops, in the middle of nowhere.
Which proves my point. We should just pave over the fucking countryside. What good does it do? It just creates fucking crazy people. Tarmac the whole place. You don't get this kind of nuttiness in the city. You get plenty of drug addicts, stuff like that, but you don't get crazy fuckers like this in the city. Because that's where civilization is. You learn that actually other people aren't to be feared in quite that same way.
There's a great
pave over it.
Comedian who said that if you're more than, I can't remember what he said, it was like, if you're more than 2 miles from a pizza delivery service, you're in serious danger of becoming a complete lunatic redneck. So he would make sure he's always within a certain range of a pizza delivery business.
For fuck's sake. That was on Peep Show.
Right. Oh, was it? Right. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I haven't actually watched the last season yet.
Is it Mitchell or Webb? I forget which one. The little chap, anyway, he says it, yeah. And he's right. Yeah. He's absolutely right. If you live out in the sticks, you're going to go fucking crazy. Because you don't know when to talk. You need lots of different people around you to keep you levelled, it seems to me. I mean, I am joking about paving over it, obviously, that's crazy. But
hold on, Kevin. But David Cameron said multiculturalism has failed, right? So obviously multiculturalism failed.
Well, as Fox News rightly pointed out about 18 months ago, Birmingham is a 100% Muslim city.
I love that. I love watching him go up the BBC and just getting ruthlessly shred to pieces as well. That was brilliant.
Yeah. Well, they do have a Mecca bingo.
They do. We've got several, absolutely. And not just that, but it was good to find out I was a Muslim, because it turns out I've been an absolutely appalling Muslim for fucking years now. I've been breaking all sorts of laws.
I did actually want to get on to...
Do they have a hell? I don't know.
I wanted to talk a bit in this hangout about the Muslim experience, well, the British experience of Muslims living in Britain and the Muslim experience of living in Britain and stuff, because... that they have. There's quite a lot more.
Shouldn't you? Because I don't think Andy can really answer the second part of that.
No, I know. But I'm talking more about how it's perceived.
I think as a Muslim, I definitely.
Because you hear people going on about Sharia law and stuff, but if you actually look into it, the Sharia courts in Britain and Europe and stuff, they're completely voluntary for the Muslims that take part. They're only involved in civil things, not criminal cases, and you're not allowed to take part if you're not Muslim.
Yeah, they're not law courts. When people call them Sharia law courts, that's a fucking lie. They're religious courts of arbitration. They're essentially, in legal terms, some people in a room talking. That's all that amounts to.
Well, they're for civil disputes.
If at any point anyone wants to leave, they can, and they can take it to a proper, actual fucking court. There's no way in which these courts can supersede British law. They're not implementing it. They're not overtaking British law. And the great example of that is that the Jewish people in Britain have had the same thing, the Beit Din courts, which again are just religious arbitration courts, and they've had those for hundreds of years in Britain. And they haven't taken over Britain. Unless you listen to fucking, I don't know, Alex Jones or some crazy shit. But we can still buy, like, pork and stuff, so it's clearly they haven't taken over the fucking place. And neither will the Muslim. That's not the way British law works.
Yeah, well, someone said to me once, they were complaining that, they said they think it's a special right for Muslims that they have these Sharia courts. And I was like, no, because if they're using the Arbitration Act, I said if you ever want to mutually arbitrate something with someone, you're just as entitled to use the Arbitration Act as Muslims are.
Absolutely.
Go nuts. Yes. So they're just using the same act that everyone else has.
Yeah, so it's just fear-mongering bullshit. Playing into the same pandering fucking crap about, every time...
But creeping Sharia. Hey, Contel told me. It's got to be true.
If you put it in foreign, it makes it sound scary.
Stealth jihad, right?
Stealth jihad, that's my favourite phrase ever. It's so ludicrous. Stealth jihad. What was the other one there? A creeping Sharia.
Yeah.
Sharia. Beautiful. I mean, it's such nonsense. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. The Twitter, if you want, go and watch Dick Coughlin's compilation of tweets on the creeping Sharia thing. Fucking beautiful. Some of the, because obviously Twitter being Twitter, they just took the piss. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Make us walk. Was it? They make every time I'm drunk and I throw up in my toilet, I'm on my knees facing east. Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, have you ever seen there's a video by Pat Condell where he recommends a book called Muslim Mafia. Yeah. And when he holds it up and says, "I recommend this book." I was like, "What?"
Sounds like that Michelle Malkin book about Obama, which is like culture of corruption.
Yeah.
It's like they want everything that they don't like to sound evil, you know. Creeping shit.
Yeah. Well, Alex Jones is brilliant for that. If you ever want to laugh, go and watch one of his documentaries, and they're all called like Police State 5 and Terror Warning, and just absurd like. If they might be, you know, the titles would work just as well, and it's all full of the most crazy shit. I actually had, believe it or not, I had a celebrity, a genuine bona fide crazy celebrity. Paul Joseph Watson, who's his little uppo, his little Joey, to Alex Jones, appeared on one of my videos slagging me off. And beautifully, even the MRA's got stuck into him, calling him a crazy conspiracy cunt. So I was quite pleased with that. I don't know what the fuck randomly turned up.
Alex Jones. That guy's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
You haven't done a video on Alex Jones yet, Kevin, I don't think. Or would that be too much?
No, I haven't actually, no. I don't really need to. He's not a problem. He's not infesting YouTube atheism, so I don't see a need to bother.
No.
Like, everyone understands that guy is fucking out there unless they're his fan, and hopefully there's not them.
My favourite thing Alex Jones is when he waves paper around and just goes, "I got the documents right here!"
Yeah.
Like if he's waving paper, we're going to be more convinced. Like, these are the actual documents. This is the proof of whatever the guy says. Here it is.
Who are these government contacts he has that keep giving him documents, even though he keeps telling everyone about it?
I printed this earlier.
Look, I promise I definitely won't mention you on the fucking TV and on radio around the world this time. Honest, this is the last time I ever do it.
Well, if he's scared of being monitored, he should stop having like a big website and stop doing blogs and stop having a radio show, because I'm pretty sure they're probably listening
they're trying to silence me. You've got 1 million subscribers.
Yeah, meanwile he's got a massive
really easy to silence me.
Shows, for God's sake.
They failed. They failed to silence me. Even though they're authoritarian dictatorship, they still can't silence Alex Jones.
Yeah, if anyone was going to get silenced, it would be someone like him, right? So.
Yeah, these would be the first people to get shot. Yeah, if they
It's really fucking hard to silence, apparently. So.
Well, I love the Miles Power line about 9/11. The kind of, and it's such a great cutting argument in one sentence about you expect us to believe that in 1996 the US government couldn't hide a spunk stain on a blue dress, but yet 5 years later are able to pull off the biggest conspiracy and the biggest terrorist attack ever without anyone knowing about it.
Chomsky said something along the lines of, "I'm going to go with the engineering world's consensus rather than your 2 hours of internet research."
Yes.
Well, Google's pretty good, though. Find out a lot.
Nah, man, Tor, it's all on the deep web.
That's true. Wikipedia's got like 97% accuracy or something. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I was getting a shit, but that's all I need.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah, if people like Alex Jones were right, you know, the government would have killed him long ago. They'd have had him offed. Yeah, he's he's clearly either, unless they're just trying to play it like they know how much of a loon he comes across as, so they think we'll just let him keep telling the truth, so no one will believe it because he doesn't come across as very believable. That's the only possible.
He's the Illuminati's best weapon in hiding their secrets. Because as long as he's the one outing them. They're safe. They're absolutely safe because no one in their right mind is going to look at this ranting, fucking sweaty, fat Texan mess and think, oh, well, he's believable. No, of course you're not going to fucking think that. Anyway.
It's funny too, like, they go on about how the US military isn't, or the US government isn't doing enough to prepare for terrorist attacks, but then when they did that, what was it called, that operation they did in Texas, where all the Texan conspiracy theories were going on about how there was going to be a US government in Texas and stuff.
They're being invaded by the government of their own nation somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they want it both ways. They want the government to do the preparation, but they don't want them in Texas, which is like, that part of America is the closest to being like being the Middle Eastern environment. So of course that's the sort of area where they're going to do training against Middle Eastern terrorists. Oh no, but we want you to do the preparation, but not here.
And they've got massive bases in Texas, so just logistically it works well. And that's another reason that Texas would be totally fucked, because if those bases go, the federal, the Army and Navy installations, they're absolutely fucked. They make up huge parts of those towns and cities' economy.
Jamestown.
That's a weird place.
You need America more than America needs you.
There's a town in Texas called West Texas. So when people say West Texas, they're not always necessarily referring to the western part of Texas. They're sometimes just referring to a small town called West Texas.
But yeah,
in Australia, there's a town called Chinaman's Knob.
Well, there was a stadium called Nigger Stadium until a few years ago.
Oh, good God.
Fuck Canada.
That's fucking true.
Aborigines were protesting it for like 30 straight years until they finally took it down.
What's it called now? It's not there anymore.
I think they tore the whole thing down.
African American Stadium now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a town in Canada called Fuck.
Of
course there is.
Be awesome.
Town in Ireland called Muff.
Muff Island.
There's a couple of places in Scotland called Twat. I think there's 2 towns in Scotland called Twat.
I got a few here.
There's a town in France called Beach. But it's got an accent over the E, so it's not bitch, it's beach. Love it.
Shag Point, USA, Pussy, France, fucking Australia.
Yeah.
Even got the sign. Fucking.
In Canada, there's Wet Beaver Creek as well. I kind of want to do a tour of all these places and get a T-shirt with all the tour dates on the back, just like places with amusingly rude names, just be like twat, Wet Beaver Creek, fucking, fuck, beach, and just have the just have a
Condom France
with all those on the back. Yeah.
Oh no! There's a place in Victoria, Australia called Mount Buggery.
So many people are conceived there. I'm from Mount Buggery. Oh, we all are around here.
See, again, that's what goes wrong. When you got too much open space, you go fucking crazy. What did I say? It just proves it.
Maybe Buggery.
Is that town in Florida that's owned by Disney? Celebration, Florida? Where Disney owns the whole town and
I mean, the Disney Corporation is awful, but that's a nice name for a town.
Legit. Fucking.
Well, I mean, it's only it's the celebration of Disney, so it's a very specific kind of celebration.
Oh, yeah. I'd rather live there than Mount Buggery, though. I'd rather have that address than
like shitty.
If I ever go to Australia, I'm going to have to go to Mount Buggery now, just because I just want the picture next to the sign that says "Welcome to Mount Buggery." It's genius.
Just so long as you go with no expectations. So. You're like,
oh yeah, it's gonna be some little fucking nowhere town with nothing there other than the sign that says "Welcome to Mount Buggery." That's all it's gonna be.
I want my money back.
Exactly. I expected full-on fucking. I won't complete that sentence. I'll leave that there.
To bring this back to our topic, just briefly.
What was
I was having an argument with a guy. I think it was yesterday. Who was saying that that it's not terrorism because no one's been hurt and that they haven't even tried to hurt anyone. Apparently, I guess maybe. But I was thinking that even in that case, where that specific incident isn't terrorism, it doesn't change the fact that white domestic terrorists, right-wing terrorists, have killed more Americans than Islamic terrorists since 9/11.
Yeah.
I still think this counts as terrorism. I think the fact they haven't killed anyone is just a technicality.
Well, surely terrorism isn't the outcome; it's the intention, isn't it?
Yes.
If their intention, or they're willing to shoot and be shot, kill and be killed, as was the quote from earlier,
yeah,
they're fucking terrorists. There's no other way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I think that the reason why it hasn't resulted in a gunfight is because they've put the onus on the federal government. So they've said if you do X thing, it will turn into a shooting fight, and the federal government hasn't done that thing. So that's the only
to avoid the Waco style situation.
Exactly, which is really bad press.
Yeah, regardless of the rights and wrongs, no government wants to have to gun its own fucking people down. It doesn't look.
It's not just bad press as well. Like, I don't know if you know this, but the guy who did the Oklahoma City bombing, Timothy McVeigh, he was actually at Waco. He visited Waco, and that was part of his, during the siege, and that was part of his radicalization experience. So I think that sort of incident just leads to more radicalization, just like drone bombings or,
Yeah, as with anything, you make martyrs of people that needn't be martyrs, basically.
Indeed. And I think the militia movement knows all this stuff, and they know that based on the history of how it's been going, that they know that the federal government won't turn this into a shooting fight. So they're just sort of taking advantage of that fact.
Exactly, yeah. If they were actually in real serious danger, I wonder how brave some of them would be.
I guess it's just a wait and see situation, isn't it? So see if it turns to complete shit, or if somehow they negotiate.
Well, that's the federal government, regardless of what these people might want, the federal government isn't going anywhere. It can sit tight and let them freeze over fucking winter or whatever. The government don't really care.
That's the mistake. They made it like Ruby Ridge. They decided to go in, right?
Well, the thing with Ruby Ridge is that the guy had a court date coming up, and he had not turned up for court. So they were basically going out there to say, hey, look, you've got to come to court. We've rescheduled your court appointment, and you've got to turn up this time. That was all that they went there to say. And when they it turned into this confrontation and turned into a gunfight. But they weren't going there to like grab him and take him away or whatever. They were just basically going there to give him a notice to turn up to court at on X day.
Is that the one where they shot the baby or something? Like it was a
no, that they shot his son and his wife, and I think that his son's dog was shot as well, and a federal agent was also killed.
Yeah, so the raid was like a complete fail. They just.
Well, but that's the thing, is it wasn't a raid. They weren't going there to raid them. They were going there, and they knew this guy was a sovereign citizen nutcase, because the reason he was arrested was for trying to buy a gun or sell a gun to an illegally modified weapon to a federal agent, undercover federal agent. So they knew this guy was one of those guys who stockpiles weapons and was one of those militia lunatics. So that's why they turned up there with weapons.
He should have used the Second Amendment argument, because I'm sure it would have worked for him. Because he was. Oh no, he wasn't white, was he? Or so. Yeah.
Well, no, he was white, the Ruby Ridge guy. But that's the thing, is he was illegally modifying his weapons and stuff. So that's why ATF was onto him.
The Second Amendment too. So. With the exception of illegally modified guns.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that there hasn't been a time, for at least not in my knowledge, there hasn't been at least some regulation on the sale of firearms in America. You have to do it through X and Y channels, and you can't do this and that. And so I think
add shit on the top of the Second Amendment. It's not just like that's the only rule surrounding guns. Like
and people say, well, there are some states where there's very, very, very little regulation. But the thing is, the federal regulations that do exist supersede state rules, and that's how America works. So even in those states, there's a lot of like states in America that are just sort of deluding themselves into things, like trying to change laws that they can't really change. Like there was one in, I think it was Texas, Rick Perry, that lunatic Rick Perry, tried to institute a rule that would make Latino voters, would disenfranchise a ridiculously large amount of Latino voters, and the federal government was just like, no, you can't do that, so nah.
Yeah, there was one in the week, wasn't there? state judge in Alabama who tried to make it illegal for gays to marry in Alabama. Even
Right, yeah, they love doing that.
He's got absolutely no jurisdiction to make that call at all.
Yeah, well, it's like the Republicans in Congress trying to get rid of Obamacare, like, what, 47 times or whatever it was, even though they knew every time that it would fail because Obama said, I'm going to veto it every time. They knew it wasn't going to work, but they did it anyway, like 40 times. Because it's a PR stunt.
Why do something productive with that parliamentary time? Why not just fucking sit down the drain?
Did you know that the US Congress now has a lower favorability rating than the British Empire did shortly before the War of Independence?
Well, this is our time, Andy. Let's get back over there, mate. Let's take it back.
Yeah. Take it over. I don't really want it, to be honest.
Well,
I don't want to take that on.
On Independence Day, people say, "Oh, how do people in Britain see Independence Day?" and all the rest of it. And I always try and do it sarcastically and just say, "Well, you claim to be independent, but are you really? We just see it as a blip in our relationship. We'll be back. Don't worry.
Yeah."
Which is a joke, by the way, to the Americans. I'm not actually advocating reinstitution of British rule.
No.
I think
that would be an interesting and very quick war if it were to happen.
A lot of people just ran to their bunker and got their guns and took out their multivitamins. Like, this is going to get real.
Exactly. Because in that instance, the US would really need its well-regulated militia. I don't think its stockpile of weapons, the likes of which humanity has never seen before, would work. Yeah. Clearly, they'd need Billy Bob and fucking his cousin wife.
Yeah.
It's funny, that the Americans are really paranoid about being invaded, but to my knowledge, they haven't been invaded since the War of Independence on any particularly large
by the
scale.
Muslims. Muslims are invading right now.
Yeah, creeping Sharia.
Stealth yeah.
They had some dust ups with the British.
Yeah, technically the War of 1812, we invaded Louisiana.
Yeah, there was the War of 1812, and there was another one also in the 19th century as well. I think in the 1830s or something. And there was this whole thing where they were concerned that a war might break out between the British Empire and the United States in the 1930s, but that never happened because of the Nazis. But yeah, it's like they're so paranoid about something that doesn't happen to them, that hasn't happened to them in over 200 years. It's bizarre.
Yeah. I think I was actually thinking about this the other day, a tangential point about stuff happening and not happening on their own soil. I think part of the reason that America is so willing to go to war almost fucking constantly is because the war never really happens on their soil. They never have to actually address the consequences of their actions. And okay, in modern times, say in Britain, that is true as well. But the previous generation and the generation before, like within living memory, major cities have been bombed to fuck. So instantly you've got that kind of a barrier of reality saying, okay, let's not do war so much. Whereas in America, other than Pearl Harbor, which is 1 million miles away from the mainland, when was the last time anything really happened in America?
Yeah, exactly. I think that is a big part of it, because I think the European Union and Europe in general is very sort of anti-war now, because they're viscerally aware of what can happen with war, the bloodbath that occurred in Europe.
I think it's worth adding the slight change to that sentence of they're very anti-war within Europe.
Right, good point. That is crucial, yes.
Yeah. They don't mind bombing the fuck out of anywhere else, as long as it doesn't happen here.
Yeah, they'll bomb the crap out of Syria, no problem.
Yeah, and name your brown people, we bombed them, basically. Which is despicable, of course.
The thing I find weird about that is, they send people off to war and then they come back in like body bags, but the general public doesn't really seem to notice that. It just sort of affects like the families. Like, it seems very localized, the impact. Yeah. Like when you had the draft or whatever, it pretty much affected everybody. So everyone was like, wow, this is like affecting all of our lives. But now there's like a big disconnection between sending people off to war and the consequences.
In Britain, we've actually got the establishment. I think it's partly experience or whatever, but they've managed to make it a situation where actually they turn the deaths of soldiers into PR wins by having these ridiculous parades through the streets. There's a place called what's it called, Andy? The place where they do the fucking Royal Wootton Bassett, Royal Wootton Bassett.
Yeah.
Where they have these absurd, mawkish displays of coffins of dead soldiers with flags strapped over them through the streets, and they're these huge rallying cry things, and they're in the fucking papers. So they managed to turn what should be a symbol of why we shouldn't go to war into a reason to go to war. It's so bizarre they've managed to do that.
The fetishization of it. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ignore the morality for a second, in terms of PR, it's fucking brilliant. It's just stunningly so. But when you put the morality into it, it's utterly disgusting, of course.
I mean, yeah, I watch like Question Time sometime with like the British Commons or whatever, and at the start of every Question Time, they always like read the name of like private somebody, and everybody's like, here, like, yeah, we feel
exactly
great.
What should happen, right? When they read out those names, ask every single fucking one of them when they walk out of that chamber an hour later, can you name me one of the people that was read out? Or have you already forgotten the name of the person, you fucking scumbags?
Yeah.
You couldn't even name their fucking names.
I don't know if they read the names to say we're sad they're dead. Just like, look, these people are dead, and we have to express sympathy because we're politicians.
Yeah, they have to pretend to give a fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's weird, man.
If they did give a fuck, they probably would be slightly more reticent of sending them to war in the first place.
Well, I think that's why they.
What annoys me when I'm not a pacifist, but in general terms, I'm anti-war, and the idea that you're against the troops. No, I don't want them to die. How is that against them exactly? I don't even understand that as an argument.
Exactly.
Bizarre.
Yeah, and the really pro-war people don't seem to be hugely fond of like funding veterans stuff as well. Like the Republicans are always trying to defund the Veterans Agency. It's bizarre.
Well,
it's not bizarre. It makes
statistics
of they don't really give a shit about
statistics
this.
of like homeless veterans and veterans who are addicted to all kinds of substances and stuff. If our society gave a fuck, as it pretends to, about veterans, that none of those people need be in that situation. But they clearly don't give a fuck because it comes back to I don't want to pay my taxes.
That's right. Yeah. It's the I'd rather have the what is it like 0.3 of a cent in my weekly pay packet than help people.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. I don't know if we want to move on to this topic, but I was curious about the whole Milo pedophile thing. That might be like too epic a conversation. I don't know.
we can go into that if you want, but be warned, you might get this video flagged because it happened to me.
Fuck.
I find it really weird that because the Je suis Milo hashtag, setting aside the fact that it's kind of like a bad thing to it's an offensive joke, but I found it really weird that Milo's actually embraced that, because wasn't that started as like a derogatory thing to make fun of Milo? But he's actually into that tag. I've seen him using it.
But it's the way
I don't know about its origin, but he's certainly into it. But I sent out the tweet not to be too much of a narcissist, but I'm going to talk about myself for a second. I sent out a tweet that was, I think, apt for the nonsense involved in the Just Be Milo thing. Was that at the very time that he and his followers were using that hashtag, not because he was being silenced, but because they took his verification tick away. Like, oh, you fucking prick. Anyway,
I know.
Anyway, at the very same time that was happening, his followers were flagging down my video where I exposed him for being a protector of pedophiles. Free speech, hey.
No, it's like I'm a skeptic said. It's just completely neutral third parties, trolls that have just stumbled into the discussion and aren't completely neutral and don't take a side and just are trolls and doing it for no reason, I guess. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
That's why they've gone after me, Richard Coughlin, Laughing Witch, Jenny McDermott. It's all, they're completely neutral, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like on this pedophile thing, there seems to be some kind of discussion about whether he was actually enabling pedophiles, and I've had like some conversations with people about this. But I watched the Drunken Peasants thing, and in response to like the video that you made, Milo was basically just, well, actually, people misunderstand the idea of pedophilia. Like, actually, pedophilia is not like having sex with underage kids. It's actually if those kids are sexually mature. So if they're sexually mature, it's okay to have sex with them. And I was like, well, you're basically just backing up everything Kevin said in the video. Like, they were making fun of you and making fun of your video, and then he went on to confirm what you said. Like, yeah,
Well, no, but what was most annoying about that was that they cut off the bit, because one caveat I will add that I probably should have put in my original video was when the first instance he's talking about was when he gave oral sex to a priest when he was 13 and the priest was 28. Now, he's the victim in that instance, even if he wants to play it off as I was the... He said 13-year-olds can be the aggressor in that situation.
13-year-old predator.
Farcical situation. But anyway, but even ignoring that, he's the victim in that situation, so I probably should have mentioned, explained that a little bit more. But in the second instance, he's going to Hollywood parties where he sees what he describes as very young boys. Now, if he doesn't think 13 is very young, how young is very young in this man's eyes? I don't know. I dread to fucking think, right? He saw very young boys taking drugs, so basically being fucking drugged and then raped by adults. And not only did he do A, nothing to stop it, B, he did inform the fucking authorities afterward.
Well, but
so
he's saying that's not
so he's protecting the identity of child druggers and rapists.
Well, his basic argument, the way I understand it, is he's saying we should leave it up to the adult to decide whether the minor is mature or sexually mature enough. Let's just leave it up to the pedophile to decide if it's a crime.
There's no way that any adult would ever be unscrupulous enough to abuse that system. Clearly, that's never happened.
Or he's saying the kids have the presence of mind to know when they're sexually mature. Like, oh hey, I'm sexually mature now. He literally said of
himself and said the 13-year-olds can be sexual aggressors to 28-year-olds. What are you talking about, you mental fuck?
Maybe this priest guy
children, man.
No fucking self-esteem. I'm just like, oh girl.
And yet my video got flagged down where I said exactly this. Imagine that.
Yeah, I just had a look at the Je suis Milo on Twitter there. Yeah, that's mad. That thing I posted in the chat there, he said if you cut his head off, he'll grow 2 heads. Is that a popular culture reference of some sort?
It's a reference to Hydra from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, yeah.
Right, okay. It's actually quite weird that he said that, like cut my head off and I'll grow 2 heads.
But yeah, that only works for people, Milo.
Yeah.
People have put his head on, like, Twitter's a bizarre place, where they've got 2 penises with his heads put on the top of in the bottom. Who's creating those memes? Who's doing that?
Maybe that's why he was so sexually aggressive. He's got 2 penises, apparently. I don't know. He's like some kind of music.
Clearly, you can rape 2 children at once then if you wanted to in that situation, couldn't you? Not that I'm saying he's a pedophile. Just pulling that out.
The first time
Milo himself was not a pedophile. I assume.
No, he's not. As far as I'm aware.
But he's just giving kind of cover to pedophiles. Because I read do you know NAMBLA? The NAMBLA organization, North American NAMBLA.
Sounds eerily like a NAMBLA guy. He does.
Yeah, I read their whole thing, and it said that they want people to realize that children can be sexually mature, and I was like, that's exactly what Milo said.
Well, the reason I even started that up was SJW101, the political gamer, who should all be subscribed to anyway. But if you're not, he made a great video about that, about the hypocrisy that Milo and Sargon had engaged in with the Sarah Nyberg pedophile thing. Which, if she's guilty of any of that, is disgusting as well. But you can't, on the one hand, say it's disgusting for this person to have sexual fantasies about a young child, and yet say it's absolutely fine, on the other hand, for a 28-year-old to actually fuck a 13-year-old. Like, you can't have it both ways. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would be disgusting enough if he was just okay with pedophilia across the board, but at least that would be like an honest position, rather than a hypocritical one, as well.
Some guy was trying to argue to me, he's like, that's not pedophilia, that's like hepophilia or something. There's like a
exactly,
word.
yeah. Because when it comes to adults fucking children, we should really be worried about the semantics.
Yes.
I was like, oh, it's hepophilia? Well, that's alright then.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's called ephebophilia?
Something like that. I have to look it up again, but it's like, oh, great, you got me, because you've got a different word. Okay.
Yeah, that makes it okay, yeah.
Ah, Jesus. It's kind of sick.
But on the plus side, I did The strike. Well, the video is still taken down, but the strike was removed. So I've been able to put up a video about an hour ago or so. Well, 2 hours now. So that's good. But I've still got one strike, which is fucking annoying because I like to do hangouts as videos, if that makes sense. I now can't do that. But
are you hanging as Kurt right now? Then you got Kurt Logan.
No, well, no, I've got yeah. This is my second channel, Kevin Francis Logan. I'm now doing this under. Which again, you should all be fucking subscribed to because it's my backup in case they come back for me, which I'm sure they will.
That's true.
But the first time I saw the Je suis Milo hashtag was being used by an anti-MRA Twitter account who goes on about Milo a lot.
I didn't.
Well, I had assumed its origins were derogatory.
I wouldn't be surprised.
The peasants in the Joe Rogan.
But it's so disgusting. Even if we ignore the absolutely ludicrous nature of getting pissed off that they took your little blue tick away, you sad little prick. Even if we ignore that, the cultural insensitivity of the je suis bit of that is just appalling. What the fuck? What kind of towering narcissism would it be for you to compare yourself to people brutally slaughtered in a terrorist attack 12 months ago?
Yeah.
Well, somebody did say that Milo is basically just like a troll. If a troll, comes off the page and just becomes a real person, it's just like the embodiment of Milo, basically. And a lot of people like that because people I don't know, they associate with trolls and they just like trolls. So, the more trolly he is, the more people talk about him, and the more people are like.
Well, basically, he's Donald Trump, but he's not even trying to win votes.
Like, it doesn't matter how much full of shit he is. Everyone's just like, the more full of shit he is, the more I like him.
I think the weirdest thing about Milo is that people seem to be able to embrace Milo because they agree on one thing, which is anti-feminism, and then overlook everything else he ever says. Like the drunken peasants are broadly liberal type guys, right? I mean, like TJ is a broadly liberal type, as far as I understand. He usually seems to come across as sort of broadly, centre left or whatever.
It
but
depends how he feels on any individual day, basically.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, they seem to be willing to embrace this far right, like sort of uber right wing, bizarrely, with these bizarre views, just because they agree on that one thing. It's the same with Gamergate. Like Gamergate's willing to overlook the fact that he's a total fraud when it comes to gamers, that he really doesn't like gamers at all and has said so several times.
Yeah.
Even, what was it, like 6 months before he joined Gamergate, he was calling them crybaby 12-year-olds in their parents' basements and stuff. They're fine with overlooking that as long as they agree with him on that one thing. Which I find that really bizarre.
Just to clarify on TJ and the rest of the drunken peasants, they're basically liberal unless the person has brown skin or a vagina.
Yeah, they're like lazy liberals. They're broadly centre left if it's easy for them. If they have to give up anything that they cherish or take a stance that means they have to do any work or challenge their own views, challenge their preconceived notions, then they're not liberal anymore.
Yeah, we'll say 10 years ago, people who, they might have been quite on the left then, but society has moved on a lot since then, and they haven't moved with it. Even more so if you look at, Pat Condell used to consider himself a liberal once, believe it or not. But that's how much society has moved, and he hasn't. Society has moved on, and he has stayed in the same place, and he's found himself, I always say, like the wheel turning, and suddenly you find yourself on the right because you haven't moved.
Yeah, basically, even very left-wing people would have been incredibly racist, even 20, 30 years ago, by today's standards. But like you say, if you were left-wing then and you stayed still and you didn't try to move with the times, you now find yourself very much on the right.
Yeah. I think the whole third way movement hasn't helped as well. This whole thing with the what's called New Labour in Britain, and Clinton and Obama, those guys who are sort of socially left wing in a broad sense, but then embrace like sort of right wing economic policies and things. I think that sort of has blurred the lines of what a liberal is. I think that hasn't helped at all.
Yeah. Well, the way Americans use the word liberal as well is very different to how it was used classically. Like I don't know about New Zealand, in the UK we've sort of started to take on that Americanism. We've started using the word liberal as a synonym almost to someone on the left wing, but That's actually not originally what it meant.
And an insult. Let's be honest. That's how it's used pejoratively in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the last Liberal Prime Minister we had was third way. I liked her a lot, but Helen Clark, but she was third way, and she's pro.
You're electing women to high office.
I know. It's
crazy. State are you living in?
What about men?
Yeah. Where are the men?
During her entire prime ministership, where was the representation of men in the office? Because 100% of the prime ministers were women at that time. Disgusting. That's mathematics right there.
But she's on merit that woman would never become prime minister because only men have merit. So.
But she's pro the TPP. She's pro the Trans-Pacific Partnership and stuff.
But now, sorry, just bring it back to Milo. Oh shit!
This is what happens when you're in the wrong hemisphere, lads. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
We're the right way up, at least. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just to bring it back to the Milo thing, the thing that I didn't understand about that drunken peasant's conversation was that no one challenged him on the shit he said, and I feel like if I was there, I don't know how I would listen to that shit.
Because again, that would take balls, wouldn't it? That would take some fucking gumption to actually say,
I would have,
we have this man on our program, we're going to take him on. We're going to say no, that's a fucked up thing to say. You'd have to actually have a backbone.
They weren't disgusted by it. They were just like, oh, let's just listen, and then, all right, let's move on to the next topic now. And I would have been like, well, this guy said some fucked up shit. Shouldn't we?
Well, have you heard really believe that TJ has said?
I really believe it all comes down to the whole economic reliance thing. All four of us aren't financially reliant on our YouTube channels or what we do on the internet, whereas the DPP is, and TJ in particular is. And I think they don't want to risk anything except they don't want to do anything except pander because they don't want to risk losing their audience because they saw what happened to Sargon when he challenged Gamergate.
Or maybe they just weren't disgusted by what he was saying. They were just like,
I think they were.
Have you heard some of the things have you heard some of the things TJ has said about paedophilia in the past? I mean, it's fucking weird. There's a really old video of his. You have to search around for it, but he says he doesn't think. If a couple adopted a child from the third world and fed them, clothed them, but molested them a couple of times, he said that would be better than them just living in the third world because they'd starve to death. That's actually something he said. He said that he doesn't think it's all that bad.
This is like a thought experiment.
He said they're not monsters if they do that because they've fed and clothed the kid. They've given it a better life than...
That's some Sam Harris shit right there.
TJ uses relative privation fallacies more than anyone else on YouTube, man. He just loves it. In your video, in your episode of the Descent of Manosphere about him, Kevin, remember he was going on about how people shouldn't care about... What was that... that woman that he was demonizing and saying, she doesn't matter that because Africa, basically. What was that?
Oh, yes, yeah. Going on about,
that's right.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Absolutely he does use a lot of that fallacy. He sort of every second video he's saying.
What are the details on that? What do you mean Africa? I don't get it.
Well, he basically said that people shouldn't be concerned about her and what happened to her because there's bad stuff happening in Africa.
Yeah.
So fuck Africa.
Yeah. By the way, donate to my donate to my new website.
Don't send your money to Africa. Send it to me.
Better places we can send our money that other people in more need. People are looking to set up websites that never appear, but actually need money for food and clothes and things.
But the next one definitely will happen. He'll definitely actually produce the goods at the end of it. Definitely.
He learned his lesson those previous 3 or 4 times.
But my to do with his pedophilia, given his absurd obsession with false rape allegations, because again he's definitely not pandering, obviously, was that in an old video with is it Fake Sagan or someone? He's doing a hangout and he's chatting away in the chat room, and he admits that when he was 23, he fucked a 14-year-old.
Yes.
Right? Which he then later recanted and said that was a joke. Which either he's a child rapist, or B, he made a false rape allegation against himself, which is delightful. Ridiculous.
I think the reason he thinks that false rape claims are such a big deal is because he made one himself.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He's like, well, I did it, so obviously it can't be that rare.
I know he definitely accused Coughlin, and I know of someone else who told me in private, and I can't reveal them therefore, that he has made allegations that they were paedophiles. So clearly he's not
he did say, what TJ once said, that he'd been molested as a kid, but then he admitted he lied about it. So he has made a false rape accusation.
To do some ruthless self-promotion, if you go and watch My Descent of Manosphere, episode I think 11 on TJ, I juxtapose those two bits of footage. Literally where he says, as a 5-year-old I was raped or some shit, and then says, nothing fucked up ever happened, I was never raped.
Are you sure he wasn't just taking the piss or something? Like, because I don't know.
No, he was being absolutely genuine in both instances. I can assure you of that. Yeah.
That makes no sense to me. I mean, I don't know why you do that.
Yeah, it's
because he's looking for attention. He's an attention seeker, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same as Milo. I mean, that's where they share the kind of,
Yeah, his fans just keep giving, they don't care that he's lied to them. He's admitted he's lied. They keep giving him money, even though none of the things it's supposed to be funding ever appear. And that's really worrying.
Well, I loved it when he came out against Jacqueline Glenn for being a liar. You think, what kind of fucking absurd world do you live in where you think you have the moral high ground?
Yeah,
ridiculous.
She learned from you, TJ. Yeah. She learned from the best. But the thing is, TJ's dad was, I don't know if you know the history of him, but his dad was a con artist. He ran a diploma mill. Basically, he gave people fake diplomas in exchange for money. He did some time in jail for it as well. And I think possibly TJ, having grown up in that environment, just sees this sort of thing as normal. Just lying and swindling is just the normal part of life. It's the normal environment he's grown up in.
I didn't actually know that, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
With these fans, some of the interactions are amazing because, again, some of them might not know, but I think a lot of them are fully aware of TJ's distorted version of the past and all the rest of it, and all these lies and deceptions and fraud. Again, fraud for legal reasons, not whatever. It's not technically fraud or whatever, but he's scammery. Let's call it that. And they'll pretend like he's some fucking saint, like he's some god. And I jokingly refer to his sex tapes, right? And again, it was a joke. If someone wants to shove a banana up their ass, that's their fucking business. I don't really care. But when you're a prick and something embarrassing comes up, I think it's fine to make a joke about that, especially because. To quote TJ, he hoped that a rape victim drowned in her semen. I'm sorry, at that point, you give up your right to have like a little bit of silly privacy.
That was the worst thing he ever did. I think that interaction with that rape victim, that was just obscene.
I reckon you could almost say that was like just the worst taste joke, like the kind of fucking Michael Richards situation, like. Oh, he's a nigger, kill him, whatever.
I don't think you can use the joke defense when you're quite obviously really angry at the time that you said it, because people don't. That's not how jokes work. You don't get really, really angry and then make a joke. That's you say something you really feel when you're when you're really angry.
When you're so angry, you don't care about the consequence of the words you say, but you kind of know they're bullshit. That's possible. He could have just been like, I'm as offensive as I can,
Yeah, I think he was just doing it to hurt the woman, which is appalling, of course. But I don't think he literally believes the words that he was saying in that instance. But that sort of doesn't matter. I don't care. He was trying to hurt her.
It's a matter of public record now.
The most appalling thing.
Well, I mean, I would have no recourse to do that to anyone, and I assume none of you guys would. So.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think we're decent human beings. Yes. Yeah.
I get angry with people sometimes, but I don't go and say horrible things because of my anger,
I do, but not that
You just
bad.
yell into a pillow or some shit.
Well, just don't.
I make a sarcastic YouTube video about the bastard.
Yell into something. Yeah, make
Yeah,
it like a
link,
video. There you go.
yeah, that link in the sidebar, that's TJ's dad. That's the Wikipedia page about him.
How deep into the rabbit hole are we going to go here?
Well, this is the thing. When I do my research for my Descent videos, I go full right down the rabbit hole, and you get into the nooks and crannies of these people. You search back through you find their old blogs and stuff. Some of the shit these people have produced. Davis Orini's a fucking madman. He's just insane.
Oh yeah.
Some of his modern videos are bad, but some of his older stuff is just. There's a bit you must. I can't remember the thing. I'll try and find a link or something like that. Of him, he's just left the army. He's about 23 or something, and he's ranting in a car park, in like a parking lot for the Americans watching, about beating some nigger to death or something. It's really quite disturbing. Yeah. And you know he's talking shit, but the fact that he's even doing, and he's got like a bottle of beer and a cigarette in his hand, and he's like this kind of almost punk-looking chap. Is very strange.
It's like deep poetry or something, huh? He's just ripped off.
You might be giving a little bit too much credit there.
Was he wearing a beret or something?
Oh, they're talking about O'Reilly.
I like O'Reilly's brilliant because he almost sees himself as a sort of topical, I suppose, like a David Bowie in reinventing himself. He had like his kind of leather-clad, kind of, like I say, kind of almost a punk look in his youth, and he's kind of become this creepy fucking Anton LaVey, creepy magician character, and now he's this kind of homely, nicely lit cowboy bloke. Like he's so bizarre. It almost reminds me of. I watched this great documentary on Charles Manson, and during his court case, he used to shave his hair and do it in different styles every day in court to try and throw the people off. It's apparently a common trick of psychopaths to try and trick people, and it seems to me that's what O'Reilly does. He tries to present himself as this other thing, and he's just a prick, basically.
Have you seen this martial arts movie?
Oh yes.
It's amazing. Yes, David O'Reilly made a movie. A movie that's not Gamergate. It's not as shit as Gamergate. Sorry, what's it called? The Sarkeesian Effect. It's not as shit as that.
It's called Heartache. It's an amazing film. It's about 5 minutes long, and it's basically, you know, Davis O'Reilly does this kind of philosophical thing where he's like, to become a man, you must do blah 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 blah, and it's basically that, and he gets chased by this group of suit-wearing ninja people, and then they beat this shit out of him, and then the film ends. It's so peculiar.
Yeah, it's on YouTube somewhere. Yeah.
Is he still growing his hair out?
It's on O'Reilly's fucking channel. He's proud of it. So he's got it. I'd be so ashamed of that. I would fucking burn every copy there ever was.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Yeah.
The first time I saw him when he was growing his hair out is one of the creepiest things I've seen. He looks so creepy. I was like, whoa! I was really taken aback by just how he looked with hair. It was with the amount of hair he had at the time. It was he does have that sort of chameleon thing going on, I think.
He looks like a creepier version of Maynard from Tool, kind of.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Like super creepy.
Is that a nerd reference I'm not going to get?
What's that?
Is that a nerd reference that I'm just not going to get? I don't know.
Tool.
The metal.
Right. Sorry. Yes. Okay, I'm with you. Right. I thought you were referring to like a game or something. I thought what?
Maynard Keenan is their vocalist, and he has a history of doing bizarre things with his hair.
But people actually like that guy, so it's the difference.
Yeah, I like him. He's awesome.
And he's got
his obsession with growing wine instead of making music is kind of annoying, but oh well.
Yeah. Oh well.
If only Davis O'Reilly would fuck off and make wine instead.
Or make music. Has he made music? That would be fun.
Well, he can't do a worse job than his fucking erstwhile partner, Jordan Owen, a trained musician who makes music so bad it makes dying cats sound brilliant.
I think it just depends how you mix dying cats. You could make that sound pretty good. Like rhythm. But yeah, I just thought it funny that Jordan Owen, that's his name, right?
Yeah.
Like, Davis O'Reilly was so shitty. Even Jordan Owen was like, I'm not associated with this guy. Like, please, get away
That's the
from
thing,
me.
though, is that Jordan Owen was willing to associate with them, and he's either in denial or extremely naive or
And he realized
really
this guy is
bigoted,
fucking
basically.
crazy. I just can't be associated with this guy. It's like, wow.
Well, to bring it back to a point we were making a second ago.
They fell out of it.
Yeah, well, they fell out twice. Yeah. To bring it back to a point we were making earlier about these supposedly liberal people associating with extreme rightists, people like Sargon of Akkad, who sees himself as a left winger, but yet if you would go and watch, and it's still on his channel, his talk with Davis O'Reilly, they're so chummy, it's ridiculous. Even though this is a man that denies the fucking Holocaust, it's absurd.
Well, I don't think these guys challenge their interviewees. Like, they don't challenge their ideas. They just sort of like, oh, okay, tell me more about the lizard man.
Yeah, to be fair, I got a bit of that as well. When I went on Sargon's channel the first time, I gave him fucking absolute dog's abuse, and he gave me nothing back. So clearly he's just something of a coward when it comes to interviewing people.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, oh, you think I'm a shithead asshole? Oh, okay.
Yeah, basically, I called him a fucking scam artist. I said you're scamming your Patreon.
I've got a difference of opinion there, Kevin. So
exactly, it was ridiculous. I thought this is not what I signed up for. I thought this was going to be a fight, and I'm punching a corpse. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know about Saga, but I know we were talking about drunken peasants before. I mean, even people who like TJ would have to admit he can't do this stuff live at all. His kind of comedy, he can't do it off the cuff. That's one of the things I find annoying about the drunken peasants. Apart from the fact that I don't like the things they say and them as people, but they can't do off the cuff.
The thing I don't like about the podcast is the people and the words they use. That is the most polite way of putting that you possibly could have. That's polite.
They can't riff, they can't just do things off the cuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, they clearly need scripts, which is fine, but don't do a podcast if you're doing that, or don't do like a live. Yeah.
The guy with the mask thing. I have no idea why he wears this annoying mask.
Yeah.
That guy.
It's because he's a prick.
Ben?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whenever I listen, he seems like the most vaguely reasonable guy. Like, he seems to actually know some shit, and they're always like asking him, like, "Oh, what does this mean, Ben?" Or like, "What's this about?" Because he seems like the guy that actually knows some stuff. He just wears a stupid mask. I don't know why he.
He was also the most visibly uncomfortable when Milo was going on about the insane stuff. He was
he actually seems
really
to
not.
get the mask. That's what,
He was like, stop saying this stuff.
He's the guy. You know that whole thing where someone took a photo of Anita Sarkeesian a while ago and all that? He's the guy, isn't he? He's the guy who took that photo. Yeah. So he's not that smart. Yeah.
And he's not that smart.
No.
Well, I mean, it was Sarkeesian. That cuts across like all, political spectrum, so that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically. There's no balance with Sarkeesian.
Always surprised me. That's why I went in big on it in terms of making videos and stuff. Because for what she puts out, I don't understand the hate. I just even if you're totally of the opposite position, she's just an amiable person saying some shit on YouTube. Like, I don't get the hatred at all.
Yeah, the Mario video where it's like, Princess Peach or whatever is always just the person you have to save, and there's no female protagonists. I watched that, and I was just like, good point. And that was it. I was just like, okay, yeah.
I can explain it. I can explain the hate against her. See, the thing
Whenever I watch a video, that's the exact reaction. Either I'll go, well, that's a good point, or, well, I vaguely disagree, or I don't know. Like, I find it difficult to get passionate one way or the other. It's
just you fucking bitch.
The thing about her is it's all about there's a direct relationship between how exclusively male the space previously was to the threat of the challenge to that space, right? So in her case, she's not actually making a major threat to the maleness of the space. It's a minor thing, but it's so male that that's why they've gone so crazy about it. That's what it's about.
I would have thought the threat would be that the games turn shit and now we don't have good games. Isn't that what they're scared about? Like,
well, I mean,
just,
anyone who makes that argument doesn't understand how capitalism works, basically, because it's not like, that's the whole, they're trying to take my games away argument. The people seem to think that there's a limited number of games that can come out in any given year, and that when you expand the market, when you expand the size of the demand, the supply doesn't also expand. That doesn't happen. I think they're just sort of ignorant of the way economics works.
There'll be no boobs in our games.
Yeah. There's already like thousands and thousands of games that come out every year. You can't play them all anyway.
Yeah.
So
I've been told by certain people who don't like it, she's trying to ban this or ban that, but has she ever actually tried to ban anything, or is that just a kind of myth?
No, but even if she wanted to ban something, she couldn't.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I don't think the government are going to take the side with one hooped-earringed woman on the internet.
But that's why I think they're scared of the influence of feminists. Like that feminists will water down their games, and then they'll play the games, and they'll be like, "Oh, this is boring, and I can't behead this person, and I can't kill a hooker."
It's not just about the games, is it? It's about the culture. They want their man culture.
That's exactly. It's what. Have you guys seen the Char 42 video where he responds to a Thunderfoot video about Gamergate? It's a fantastic. All of Char 42's his 3 videos he's made, they're all brilliant. But in that one, he's talking about how, the people in the there's 2 different things. There's gamers, people who play video games, and that's all they do. That's their only relationship to video games. And then there's the gamer identity, which is the culture side of it, right? And the thing is that women aren't being excluded from being gamers. That's not the argument. They can play games. There's no law against it or whatever. But they're being excluded from being fully embraced by the identity side of it. And that's what people like Anita Sarkeesian and Lee Alexander want to change. They want to open that up. And it's a perfectly reasonable argument because isn't it like 2.3 out of 5 gamers in America are women now? So yeah, it would make perfect sense. It's just logical.
But they want to change games too to reflect more diverse.
Well, no, they want to add more games that have a different. They want to add more variety in, not change anything.
Yeah. And also, Sarkeesian isn't some absolute ideologue who says if there's one element about this game I don't like, then it's completely fucked. She says that you can enjoy culture even if there are elements at the beginning of every video or at the end. Sorry, there are bits of culture that you can enjoy completely, even though you find bits of it troubling. So she adds that caveat in there that she's not trying to say I don't like the Princess Peach thing, therefore Mario should be banned. She's never said that, and even if she tried, how could she possibly? So shut the fuck up.
That's the thing, by criticizing something like Mario, she's not saying let's change Mario. She's saying let's make a game that's sort of similar to Mario but isn't the same in these ways. That's the sort of stuff she's actually advocating.
Yeah.
Well, if the game was terrible, no one would buy it, and it would be a failure.
Exactly. Well, exactly. But if we did that, then clearly what we need in every game is to be able to beat up hookers to death and drag their corpses around. That has to be in every game. Otherwise, what's the point of life?
You mentioned the original Mario.
Yeah, but I think a lot of these Gamergate type people, and I don't know a lot about it, but a lot of them don't understand what a critique is. But that's what she's doing. She's doing critiques.
If they're going to use foreign words, what's the point?
I don't
the
like
gaming
the
community is quite a sort of anti-critic streak to it anyway, even just normal critics. There's a sort of anti-criticism streak within the gamer community for sure.
Yeah.
But they don't understand.
I love
range of things, but feminism, no good. Just that one area, shut the fuck up, stop talking about that.
Well, I love some of the people who went crazy about the Star Wars is a feminazi fucking conspiracy thing, and they're trying to push queers and blacks on us and all this crap. and yet, those are the very same people who said, well, we shouldn't criticise games because it's just a game. It's not going to have any impact on anything.
Yeah.
And you think, well, hang on, how do you associate those 2 ideas in your fucking brain?
No
one kills a hooker in Star Wars, so it's pretty disappointing.
Well, that's what that film was missing, clearly.
Yeah, hookers. Yeah. Oh God. I don't know. I haven't really followed Gamergate particularly, but the impression I get is that she's just a popular culture critic, and she's just doing analyses from a feminist perspective.
Yep,
and that's really
right.
all it is.
And the wrong subject.
Yeah. These guys, one, don't know about feminism, and secondly, they don't know what a critique or an analysis is. So.
Yeah, like I said, they don't understand how economics works.
Yeah.
But other than that, they've got it absolutely nailed down.
But no, it's all about ethics and journalism, right? Except when a man is unethical, and they're okay with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, not just that, but someone pointed out with this whole "Je suis Milo" thing, to bring you back to that fucking nonsense again. That he was obviously, even being part of Gamergate, it all being about ethical journalism, and he supposedly being a journalist, even though he writes for Breitbart, which I think discounts you from being a journalist. But the whole some of his tweets about feminists deserve to get harassed online. I'm sorry, that doesn't seem very ethical to me as a journalist, mate. Call me fucking crazy if you wish, you know.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair.
Well, that's just the troll thing again.
Government shill, obviously.
Yeah, well, it's okay to harass as long as you don't call it harassment. Yeah, as long as you call it free speech. As long as you've got free speech,
It's good to criticize feminists, and if you do it through harassment, like, who's the wiser?
Yeah. Harassment's just free speech, but responding badly to that harassment, that's censorship.
Well, that's being a Nazi, feminazi, so stop that.
Yeah.
Censorship!
I've got a great one today. Someone left a comment on my video, called me an Islamo-feminazi.
What?
That's a level up.
He's a fucking genius, just basically bringing the completely three disparate ideas and just cramming them together.
Yeah.
Islamo-feminazi. Brilliant.
I think you've leveled up there, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's the next level of feminazi. Nazi, feminazi, Islamo-feminazi. I don't know what comes after that. I think
I mean, and fitting with the Breitbart theme, like, Rush Limbaugh was the guy who came up with feminazi, so I mean, it seems kind of appropriate that that's the word everyone keeps using. We're talking about whether people are left-wing or right-wing, and they keep using feminazi, which explicitly came from, like, the biggest right-winger.
Yeah, a guy who not only doesn't understand feminism, but doesn't understand women at all. Did you see there was a thing where he demonstrated that he doesn't understand how the pill works? He thinks that every time you have sex, you take a pill.
Oh, Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah. Do you not? Because I've been doing it wrong. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, I think he had the way of shutting it all down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he said feminazi as well because he was comparing abortion to the Holocaust. He was quite specific about why he chose Nazi. He was saying that women having lots of abortions was equivalent, or well, lots of women having abortions was somehow tantamount to the extermination of Jews. That's actually why he coined the term feminazi.
Oh yeah, I've
told people that. Just be aware of that when you call someone feminazi, that's the kind of stupid language you're using.
Yeah.
And somehow I don't think Nazis would have liked feminists very much. So.
No, probably not.
Oh, Fräulein, you're a feminist. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I had
Nazis.
I showed this one of my favorite. One of my favourite. I put together like a little compilation of messages that have been left under videos and stuff, and one of them was someone advocating that Muslims be treated the same. It was under Live Life 8072's videos. I put a compilation of like really racist shit that had been left under his really racist videos. And one of them was someone had said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, but the Muslims deserve to get treated the same way that the Nazis treated the Jews, and then said something. If you don't like this, fuck you, freedom of speech or something. And the crazy idea in your head that you can advocate for an openly Nazi idea and then protect that by going freedom of speech. I don't think the Nazis were massive on freedom of speech, mate. I don't think you've got that out in your fucking head, have you? But,
They were big on Hitler's freedom of speech.
Yeah.
That's about
it. Yeah. And Nazi Germany was a democracy, although you were only allowed to vote for the Nazi party. That's actually a fact.
Oh, were they forced to vote for them, like through?
Yeah.
Like they said it was democratic, but.
Yeah, they were voted in, and then they banned all other political parties.
Yeah.
So everyone still got to vote, but they had to vote. There was only one party they were allowed to vote for, which was the Nazi party.
That's just smart electoral.
Why even bother? Why even bother doing that? Like, if you've banned all the other parties, why not just admit you're a dictatorship and save all the bother of asking people to vote for you?
That's where.
Yeah, like with Robert Mugabe. Like, there's not a single person in the world that believes your election is fair. Why bother? You're just wasting money and time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there you go. Anyway.
Right. Well, it's lunchtime here, and I'm pretty hungry, so I think I might have to.
Again, you're in the wrong part of the world. That's the incorrect time. That's incorrect. Demonstrably.
Yeah. Yeah. They're kicking out of pubs around now. Yeah.
What channels are we going to put this up on? Just everyone.
Anyone who wants to upload this is welcome to. I don't mind at all.
Yeah, I'll put it up. I have to put it up on my second one because at the minute the first one is down to 15 minutes of time, so I have to cut it up into about 1 million chunks. So
is that how flagging works? Do they like restrict what you can upload in that?
Yeah. I can't. Yeah, when you've got one strike, you can't do
strikes. I mean, sorry. Yeah.
You can't do videos over 15 minutes. You can't do live hangouts, and you can't use the video editor. And when I had the 2 strikes, I would have been, if the first one hadn't been revoked, the video's still gone, but the strike has gone, thankfully. Then I would have been locked out of my channel for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Do you have any idea who flagged you, or it's just completely anonymous?
No, because it was with a DMCA, which is copyright. You get the email of the person who sent the thing in. But this is because it's like, and it makes sense in a way, because if you're bullying someone and they report your bullying, you shouldn't get their name so you can bully them more. If that makes sense.
Yeah, when the system's being used legitimately, it makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
But anyway.
Nazis. Goddamn Nazis.
Yeah, that's the message for the night. The goddamn Nazis.
Yeah, Nazis are bad. Yeah.
Nazis.
Well, we're really ending on a fucking. This is going to split the audience. Who's with us? Who's against us?
Yeah.
Anti-Nazi.
We're pandering to non-Nazis.
Yeah. Why are we sitting on the fence, lads? Come on. Anyway, I enjoyed this. I don't know if there's anyone still watching. As I always say with these things, if there's anyone still watching, it's on you. That's your fucking fault at this point.
Live streaming is beyond my comprehension, so I don't know what's happening right now.
Well, just imagine
the learning curve setting this up.
Here's a nice way of ending it, right? Imagine the beauty of the conversation taking place here, across the vastness of the distance, as if we're sat in the same room. That's fucking mind-blowing.
And there's some guy in a dark room somewhere just listening to us. And I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
At least one of the people who are going to watch this video will do so naked.
How do you know, considering you can't really see below my shoulders, how do you know I'm not naked? Ladies, you can have that mental image. You're welcome.
All the ladies are watching.
All right. Well,
I just caught myself. I thought that was a bit of a Davis O'Reilly line. I'm not happy with that.
I don't think you said it smarmy enough. You gotta say it more.
Yeah, I don't think you can channel enough smarm and smugness to pretend to be O'Reilly.
Like, ladies, I'm naked.
Pathetic peasants. Your overlord is here.
Degenerate. You've got to get degenerate in there somewhere.
Degenerate. Yeah, you just throw that in. Yeah, decadent sluts. Yeah.
Is that just like his word for his audience or whatever? Like,
that's what he calls women, in Western women.
How are you today?
That'd be cool. That actually would be a nice, ironic name for his fans if he called them the decadent sluts. That'd be amazing. But that would take too much creative brain power than I think he's capable of.
Oh, it's his conception of what people actually are anyway, so I think it would be appropriate.
I think the extent of his the extent of his creativity is moving that skull around, you know, depending on where he's got the camera set up.
Like putting his hands.
MacArthur, he gave it a fucking name. How crazy is that? Who names a skull? You fucking mental bastard.
What's it called? I didn't know that. What's
MacArthur.
the name? MacArthur.
Yeah.
Nice, so he knows a little bit about history, I guess. General MacArthur.
Yeah. I'd say it's not a real skull. Like,
Maybe it's General MacArthur's skull.
Yeah.
Fuck, how'd he get that?
That would be amazing if Davis Orini had John MacArthur's skull. I want to know that backstory. That sounds amazing.
Well, maybe if he makes more documentaries, we'll get to learn more.
Yeah.
Why is he fucking around with the Sarkeesian effect when he's got a story that good?
Yeah.
I want to watch that documentary. Jesus Christ.
I did see the Thunderfoot interview. That shit was hilarious, man.
I like the fact that he tried to disown it and was like, "Oh, well, I can't." No, sorry, you were in the film with the Holocaust denier. The fact that you pointed out he's a Holocaust denier later doesn't let you off that fact.
Yeah, I can't control what I appear on. Like, that's beyond my control.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the insanity and awfulness of Davis Orini was pretty obvious to me within about 30 seconds of watching the first video of his I watched. The fact that it took him that long to figure it out is it's a bad mark against Jordan Owen as a person. It really is.
Yeah. And Thunderfoot. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone else basically it's Sargon.
And Mundane Matt, let's not forget that little scumbag.
Yeah.
It's not the best sign of an amazing scientist that he couldn't figure that out. Like,
no.
It doesn't bode well for your research.
Out of interest, did anyone see the Richard Carrier Thunderfoot dust-up? Where Carrier showed him to be basically using the same creationist tactics that he once slayed. It's amazing.
I saw a little bit of that.
He's
I sort of vaguely read about it, yeah.
He's either the worst scientist ever or one of the most disgusting liars ever.
I don't really know much about Richard Carrier. Like, what's he all about?
He's a historian, philosopher guy. He's okay. He's interesting enough. But he showed up Thunderfoot as a liar because Thunderfoot was so not bothered by getting kicked out by Free Thought blogs that 5 years later he still hasn't shut up about it.
Yeah.
But he's not bothered.
That's great about that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 years later, he's like, "Oh, I should dig this up again. That's a good idea."
Yeah. And he wasn't bothered by feminists infiltrating the atheist conference scene, except he's gone on an 8-year bender of hate bonerage about feminism and nothing else. But apart from that, he's not bothered. No.
Yeah, it pays the bills, you know.
Yeah, cool. I guess that's us.
Yeah, all right. Well, I don't know how to sign these things off, so I guess I will just say thanks for watching. Farewell.
Hip hip.